So the first question came in from a commercial insurance broker. He says, I've been in business for 4 years and grinding hard, but not really seeing the breakthroughs I've expected. I've heard you guys talk about how you built a massive referral network over 20 years, but I'm curious, was there a specific moment or event where you realized that the way that everybody does this is completely wrong? What was happening in your business that made you say there's got to be a better way than cold calling and hoping?
Well, what specific event? Well, here's a couple things from my life. I remember when I was this is just more of a general, not 20 years of doing. And by the way, when the guy he said, "Oh, over 20 years of building a massive referral network," I would say that a massive referral network work it certainly doesn't. You'll put it together over the course of 20 years, but we went about it on an industrial strength grade, like a push. Instead of cold calling customers, we cold called people who would be part of our network and hopefully be a referrer. So when the rest of the kids were dialing 100 dials a day to merchants or to in our business merchants and getting the door slammed in their face and all that kind of thing, we were calling potential referrers. So at a pace of our target was 28 to 30 35 a day. So you just 30 at easy math. So we wanted to get 30 new contacts a day. So you pencil that out. That's 150 a week. That's what 600 of those a month. And when you go about it really aggressively, and this is how we found it works best because we've not only done it ourselves, but we've taught people how to do it in our office, outside of our office, that you really have to hop on that hard for the first 90 days in what we do and how we do it in 90 days. So in 90 days, you've got about 1,800 uh, people in your referral network. And you want to do that as soon as possible. You want to do that fast and furious because what happens is business starts coming in and you don't have the time to build your network at the same speed. Business coming in will take away from the size of your network early on as you're building it. So that's just a correction of what he said because it doesn't take 20 years to build it. You can be in and out and done in a much shorter amount of time than that, and then you ride it and you just work it for and people come and people go, and you want to keep building, you want to keep in contact with everybody. So just a correction up front, okay? But as far as any dates, I remember the first time I realized there two times when I was a kid. One time when I was 5 years old, it was summertime in Storm Lake, Iowa, where I grew up, and on Walnut Street. And I remember I had a green bike. Back then everybody had banana seats on their bikes. It was sparkly green. I had this green bike, and it was a sunny Saturday morning. And I rode out took a left out of the driveway, the bump at the end of the driveway, and onto the street. And I remember as I was going down the street, looking over my shoulder, and thinking about my parents and going, man, if I'm ever going to get anywhere in the world, I cannot do what these people are doing. So I think there's realization over time, right? You look at some stuff and you go, that just doesn't make sense, or there's got to be something better than this. A few years later, probably I don't know, 4 years later, when my buddies and I were making, trying to sell Kool-Aid at the other end of Walnut Street to the right, and it was so freaking hot, and the my buddies were drinking all of our inventory for self-preservation because it was just smoking, trying to prevent heat stroke, and they quit, and I decided that instead of quitting, I'd load up my little red wagon and take it to a construction site, sold out every day. And so you start seeing things like that. And I thought, and I thought, well, gosh, why don't other people go about like testing things differently? And I thought, if my dad did, he'd probably spend less time working and more time throwing the ball around with me, and I thought, there's this, so, those things sort of seep in. And I think personally, obviously, I'm just predisposed to think about stuff like that. But as far as business goes, I remember vividly. Well, there's a couple things along the way in the business that we're in. And they taught us just like everybody else. You go cold call and it's a numbers game and all that kind of stuff that everybody goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody says it, so it must be true. I just didn't I hated it. I liked the business because I really enjoyed working with entrepreneurs. I didn't really care there was credit card processing. I knew because I had accepted cards before it was an important thing. And so I knew it was a good and valuable thing. It was interesting to talk about, and I got to talk to entrepreneurs all day. So I liked that, but I didn't like the cold calling aspect of it. So I knew there had to be a better way. So I tried to start finding better ways. I started doing mailers and getting new business listings down at the courthouse, and that it leads to other things. I presented to and I thought, all right, who could I partner up with? I partnered up with the guy who delivered meat to pizza restaurants, and he sent me a couple pizza places. He sent me a couple more pizza places. I presented to a programmers group who did POS systems, and that didn't get me anything. Yeah, I went to a couple banks and they go, boy, we've got our own merchant services. So, but I knew there had to be a way. And then years later, I'm in Minnesota, and it's the middle of winter in an ice storm, and I had just hooked up a credit card terminal over in St. Paul, and I live St. Paul's on the east side of this 3 million people metropolitan area, and I live on the extreme west side. And I just got done hooking this thing up, and I'm going across what they call Crosstown or Highway 62, and it's just creeping along. People are in the ditch, and ice is building up in your on your windows, and the windshield wipers trying to keep moving, and it's like, this sucks. This sucks. And I thought, there's got to be a way that I can do this without having to run around all hell's half acre doing it like this. There's got to be a better way. And it was that day I vowed, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I've got to figure out a better way. And so those were across time, whether it's just personally or in this business. At some point, you got to look at what's the quality of life you want, what's the lifestyle you want, right? Because in this challenge of being free, what we found is that it's not polishing the stuff that they teach you. It's not trying to make the stuff that they've taught you better, because that doesn't necessarily get you free. It might get you 20% better, but then you're still doing the same stuff in just a slightly different way. And it doesn't quite work that way. You've got to look at this from a different vantage point. And it's how many different, it's like turning the dials on like cracking a lock, right? You don't know the combination. You have to figure the stuff out. But the way that you do business, I thought, okay, I don't like the feeling of this. I don't like the feeling of how I'm doing this. So if I was doing what I enjoyed better to do, how would it feel? What would it look like? And so you just start experimenting. But there were a couple points. One was stuck on the road on Crosstown in the middle of an ice storm. And, just different merchants along the way too. And just the process, it's like, I remember, you getting, you show up at a business, and it said we shoot every third sales or every fourth salesman, the third one just left. You go, that's not the vibe I'm looking for in this world. So they're and so the person answering the question, I would say, okay, so obviously they aren't thrilled about how they're doing it. And so I would say, well, what's the life that you want to live? What does it cost? How much time do you want off? And you go, okay, well, now I understand my lifestyle. Now I've got to reconfigure whatever business that seems to be able to support that, pay for it, and also give you the time. And then you go, okay, how do I do that within my business to make the money and to have the time? And so, how would I? How would I? How would I? And then you just start moving around. It's like being a wrestler, right? I don't know how I'm going to beat this guy, but as I'm feeling it out, I'm moving around, and I'm trying to get the right sort of hold. It's a million analogies. So there does that help? Man,
It
life's
does.
too
Yeah.
short not to. I was listening to a song on the way to the office. What is it called? I forget who it's by, but it's something about freedom. Don't be afraid of your freedom. And the guy's kind of rapping. It's like these are the words from my grandee, daddy. It's nice to be free. It's nice to be free. You know. And so I'm singing along on the way to the office, and I'm thinking, damn straight, it's nice to be free. Because I left the house today, and it's like stressed about a couple things that are going on, and I didn't sleep well. It's like, and right before we go on, I can't find my chords. And I think, I could be doing what they taught me to do 40 years ago. I could be doing a
Mhm.
lot of stuff. I could be trying to do the old fashioned way better, polishing old stuff and knowing there's got to be, how do other people how do other people seem to have it figured out? What the hell are they doing? But I don't, so my challenge, my freedom challenge changes all the time. Chuck's been smoking hard clearly last
Yeah.
night. A little hookah with his Cheerios this morning.
Yeah, right.
Hookah and Cheerios is breakfast of ex-champions. Hookah and Cheerios. It's how we start our day.
That dates you.
Anyway, it's nice to be.
That
It's
dates
better
you.
to have freedom challenges. Like, I think instead of like most, you think of your job, you think of your work, and I think most people go, I do like this. What's in front of me? This is what I do. This is what I do every day, and I grind, and that's and I think, well, what if we're here? What if the meaning of life is to figure out why you're here? What you're here to do. We're all good at something, and are we going to use that as a platform to reach for probably what we're here to do, or are we just going to try to always make that, always just shine that, I got to do this really well. I'm just gonna do that. And I think it's not. I think we're missing, and I think that's why a lot of people are angry and frustrated, is that they're stuck doing something that they don't like, and they know there's got to be more than this, and there is. And so I think our job is not what we think our job is. I think our job is to figure out how to get how to unlock what I call our true potential, the things we already have, the things that are within us that are there, and we unlock them when we use that to have more freedom, which is doing the things that you love to do. More of, how do you unlock these things to have more time doing what it is that you enjoy? How do you figure out your things in work so you can have more time doing what you enjoy? How do you figure out things in your work to enjoy it more? Spend more time, because your job is to do 8 to 10 hours of things that you fucking hate. That doesn't seem like what if there's a creator, what we're here created to do. I think we've got it wrong. So I know we're getting off into something different than that, but I don't think so. I think it's all the same thing, and we look at things so short-sightedly, and we miss the big picture. And I think our job is to unlock who we are, and 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 also within our work. Imagine going to work and going, man, my job is to become more free today. My job is to unlock these things within me to become more free, to have more freedom. So back to the question, was there a time? Well, there's times throughout time, across the timeline where these things occur to you, whether you're 5 years old or 10 years old or, 26 years old or whatever, you know, and it's never too late. Like, remember, Chuck, we used to have a UPS guy at one of our first office. When we finally moved out of my basement and into our first office, we had a guy named Joe, the UPS driver, and he hated UPS with a passion. And UPS has a mustache requirement where it can't go below where the crease of your lips, and his is always a little longer. You look like an adult biker. And they have regulation socks, and he was like, "Screw them, man! I'm wearing," and he always had non-regulation socks. And we're like, "Dude, why don't you go do something different?" He's like, I've only got 14 more years. It's like, oh, whoa,
Yeah.
that's death rattle. Like, really? Yeah. So maybe when you get to when your time is done, you get the pearly gates and they go, "What'd you do with what you were given?" Well, I grew my mustache longer and I wore non-regulation socks. Eek. It's like, there goes, like Veruca Salt going down the bad egg tube. You didn't do it. I think it's our obligation. I think it's our obligation to figure out how to get free. Not, oh, it's an option. I think we're put here to figure that out. And I think people miss that. There you go. How's that for going into the deep?
Right?